Hello, everybody. This is Valerie.
And this is Kitty.
And on this episode of Voices of the Voyage podcast, we have Jamie. Jamie has a unique story to tell. She was a preacher's kid growing up, and she really goes into depth about what that experience was like. So it was very interesting to listen to. I personally was very taken in by her perspective on church hurt, because it's a unique perspective coming from the leadership side of things. And also, I really enjoyed the fact that this was her first time on a mission trip. And having been on several mission trips myself, I loved hearing that perspective of a first-timer.
Yes, especially because she's traveled extensively, and yet this was her first mission. And so she called it a cruise that was purposeful. And I like that expression. She also said that when, she had a different vision of what mission trip was, and that the cruise was kind of bougie. I love that.
Yes. So, guys, you're in for a treat on this one. Let's dive in. Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been married over 40 years to my best friend, Ross. We have 4 children. One of them is the producer, the very talented, wickedly talented Kanan Hessling. And he has 2 older brothers and a younger sister. And we have, is it 6 grandkids now? 5. So, and my parents, Danette and Alan Lauer, my dad is a pastor, and my mom and dad have been an amazing example of serving the Lord in the community, and not just in the community and at churches, but opening rescue missions and counseling, and they had over 80 foster kids while I was growing up in our home.
Wow.
So got to watch them do that, and they also had a hotline they ran in our home. So I was always very aware of the importance of people setting their lives aside and serving the Lord and the impact it could have.
So tell us a little bit about what it was like being a pastor's kid. We always hear things about pastors' kids. What was that like for you?
Well, thankfully, my parents were legit. I had a lot of friends who were also pastors' kids, and their lives were rough. There was a lot of performance and a lot of difference in their home versus how they were outside of the home. And so for me, it was, my parents were the same, whether they were at home or church or wherever. Obviously not perfect, but they were not performing, I guess. They were just living out their faith. And so for me, though, even with that and having parents that did not need me to be more than I was or something I wasn't, it was still hard to have so many people watching me and watching them. And then the hardest part was the way the church treats their servants. And watching my dad cry when he had been hurt, or watching people be critical instead of looking for ways to encourage them. I always say it's similar to a marriage. There's all this sacrifice, and a lot of people don't think about the heart and all that they do because of their service to the Lord and being in love with the church that they're serving. And then the people have such a tendency to be critical and even mean.
That must have been so hard.
It was, but I'll tell you, watching my dad serve the 50s and above ministry and the shelter when he was working the homeless shelter, and the way the community supported that mission of his, and the way this community in the 50s and above I love watching the interaction between him and this group of people. It's probably one of my favorite ministries because of watching how everybody cares for each other and the support and the encouragement and the excitement that is stirred up in this group. And like, that was the thing that was so amazing on this cruise, and I've gone on lots of cruises, was to see people excited to share the Lord around every corner. So, and to encourage each other and share, it was really beautiful. So being a pastor's kid has its pluses and negatives.
Yeah.
But my dad one time said to me when I was serving, you have to know why you're serving, because God's people are like sheep and they bite hard.
Oh.
So you have to know why you're doing it. And
goodness.
and he has continued to serve in spite of a lot of scars, but and with a really I don't know, just a beautiful heart. He's more like the Lord to me than any other person I've ever met. So
It's beautiful.
It's kind of hard. I think sometimes we forget that Christians are just broken people, and
yes.
Serving broken people, there's going to be hurt. Thank you for sharing that. And if for our listeners, just a reminder that if you want to hear more about Pastor Lauer, he's in our episode 1 to hear his story. So,
Yes.
Jamie, have you been on cruises before?
I have been on cruises before, yes.
Okay. And how is this different?
It was purposeful. It wasn't just self-serving. And it taught me, my husband loves to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. But it was... I saw that, Kanan. Producer Kanan. And something interesting about our travel, I know this is a little off topic, but when I was 18, my husband and I found out I was pregnant before we were married. And the only thing my doctor wanted me to have an abortion. And he was going to pay for it, and he was going to have it expunged from my record so I would not destroy my parents' character.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was going to pay for this abortion, and he wanted me to not ruin my parents' lives and their name. And the only thing that, I was even considering that concept for besides my parents was the fact that I had really wanted to see the world. And but the Lord was great in providing the nurse to show me that my parents would never want for me to make that kind of choice, and to trust the Lord and to trust my parents and trust and move forward with not making that choice and that decision. And so when my husband and I were faced with all of the circumstances, and my parents were amazing. Again, pastor's kid, and it wasn't about what will people think. They just wanted me to know that they loved me and that they were there for me, and they would do just about anything to help me. And we chose to keep our son, Austin. He's our oldest. And but the one thing I gave up was the idea that I could travel and see other people and other cultures. And I tell you, I don't think I know too many people that have gotten to travel as much as my husband and I without, and I just feel like the Lord is so incredibly generous how you can lay something down and give it to him.
Yes.
And he can blow your mind by what he does in return. And not only do we have this beautiful 41-year-old son and his wife and 2 grandkids that bring so much joy, but boy, have we traveled. But this trip showed me that you can travel more than just being blessed by whatever opportunities and experiences you get in travel. But I talked with my husband. I said, I really want our travel to be more meaningful and purposeful. And I want to travel with purpose like we did on this cruise.
So have you ever done a mission before?
No.
Oh.
I mean, I've gone into the jails and done Bible studies for like 20 some years, and I do a lot of trauma counseling, volunteer trauma counseling, and working with that community. But I've never gone on a mission trip because I had young children. So they all went on. I wanted them to have that experience, but God kept saying, not right now, not right now. And then he showed me, like, I could be praying, like using my imagination to be there. You know, I didn't have to go, you know, but I could be there, you know, in prayer and on my knees and making an impact. And so I did not go until this cruise, but I had, you know, participated through being able to support people financially and also prayer.
You were a sender.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. We need senders.
Absolutely.
So can you tell me a little bit about what you were expecting on this? Where did you have some expectations?
I didn't know what to expect. I really, I mean, because it's kind of a bougie way of doing a mission trip,
right,
especially with the stories you've heard from my parents. And like sometimes I would hear people say, "You're going to have to sleep on a hard surface. Pass." You're going to have to be around spiders. Yeah, hard pass, you know, but anyway, this was definitely...
It's like the glamping version of mission trips, right?
Definitely. So, but I really didn't know what to expect. I've been to Mexico and have spent some time with the people because I do have interest in being in places where I can make a difference. But as far as an established mission trip, I'd never been and I didn't know what to expect. So it was just kind of being excited to see where the Lord would take us and how it would turn out.
I think one of the challenges I saw you face was with your dad, getting him to the van and back, and that was quite the struggle.
Yeah, because he had just broken his knee, and that walk was pretty serious.
Yeah.
You know, getting up into the van, that lifted van with no... That was interesting. So some people sitting in the back without seats, and
yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and seniors.
Yes,
seniors. Right.
Yeah.
So what was Ensenada Day for you?
I was actually I was definitely uncomfortable. So the whole thing, a little concerned with my dad, like I said, a little concerned leaving my mom back at the boat. And I didn't get to do this with Ross. He was working. He was doing his tax season. And so it was a bit out of my comfort zone, you know, and then not speaking Spanish.
Right.
I was a little uncomfortable about how that would work out, not being able to communicate very well. So.
And what was your first impressions of the shelter that we went to?
I think the shelter was very clean for that, you know, that area was, so I was impressed with how well they've managed to take care of it. I thought the school was beautiful, and I thought it was pretty extraordinary what they have put together.
And there was a point when they released the kids to come out and kind of interact with us for like an hour. Can you describe what you got to participate in during that time?
I did a lot of watching because, again, I think it was challenging. You didn't want to like force yourself on these children. And then without speaking the language, I was kind of wondering what my purpose was for being there. And I, you know, kind of got in my head a little bit, like, not really sure what I'm doing here. And, but I have a tendency to listen and take things in. And I just would start praying for people that were connecting. And there was this discussion about helping send girls to school. And we do have resources. And so I asked the lady if we could sponsor some of the girls to get their education. And I wouldn't have had that awareness had I not gone. So even if it was for just the fact of praying for people, it would have been, I feel, worth the time and the effort, and also keeping an eye on my dad and making sure he was fine. But I loved watching you with the kids and John and, you know, all of you. And some people, like I started thinking about it. I was like, you know, you really don't have to speak the language in order to cause, you know, that kind of impact. And I was thinking, you know, like how Beverly speaks balloons. You know, like watching her is like, that's a necessary language when you minister to children.
And it's a universal language. The kids love the, you know, the balloon shaping and stuff and the animals that you can make out of it.
And I thought about your trip, all of your trip to the Ukraine, and how there's so many ways to reach people for the Lord. And it's all within what you've been given by the Lord can be given. And I thought, you know, I listen and I watch people, and, you know, one of the things that I thought was, you know, it was interesting was the fact that the couple that ran it were really connected with Roxanne and Alex, and they were talking about how they love to go when they get a chance, which is rare because finances are so challenging, but they were saying how they love to be able to go for a date. So I kind of mentioned, is there any way we could, like, I have some extra money that I'm not going to spend. Can I give it for them to go on a date?
Nice.
And then, and I said, and if maybe mention to anybody if they want to, you know, contribute to that. And I think they ended up with, you know, enough to go on a vacation by the time we were done.
Goodness.
But what I thought was amazing too is, you know, seniors don't always take mission trips, I don't think.
Right.
You know, I think a lot of times people don't really recognize the place that seniors are in. They're established, they know what they have, and they have time and they have resources that maybe the 18-year-olds don't have. You know,
Exactly.
and so it was so amazing to me, even though I didn't speak the language. And I did connect with a couple little boys that reminded me of my kids, but it was more for me the fact that I realized, you know, like this community that we have at the seniors ministry has incredible amount of love, time, and resources, and a passion to make a difference. And we ended up sponsoring all these young women to get their education, you know, watching these. We had so many people that spoke Spanish and were able to do these, you know, interpreting, so that there was this opportunity to communicate and connect, you know, with the children and the young women, the young moms. And I don't know, it was just a great, an eye-opening experience for me that you don't have to speak the language, you know, and it made me think about the fact that we can do mission work, my husband and I, wherever we go, whenever we travel. It doesn't have to be with a group, but it was pretty special to be with a group, but we don't have to. You know, we can, wherever we go, we can be prepared, you know, to listen and, you know, extend whatever it is that the people need. You know, if you're paying attention and your mindset is, you know, I want to serve the Lord, whether it's going to the grocery store, you know, like how Pastor Alan, AKA Dad, you know, he prepares himself before he goes to Walmart because that's his mission field.
Yes.
You know, he's willing to give up his parking space. He practices smiling in the because he says people look so miserable, you know, at, you know, the grocery store, and to really have a genuine smile or, you know, a kind thing to say, you know, setting up your desk like Miss Valerie, you know, so people see the Lord in your workspace, you know, the world is our mission. So
Indeed it is. Yes. I love how you were watching everybody just be used by God in their particular position. God is such a unique God, isn't he?
Yes.
And just not everybody's service is the same, or not everybody's walk is the same, but he will use you if all you just say is, here am I, Lord,
Send
send
me.
me, right?
Mhm.
You know?
Send me,
That's
yeah.
right.
And I wanted to share just a little story about when we were able to sit down with the women in the shelter, and my husband and I were sitting across from this very young mother who had a 14-year-old baby. She was only 18 years old.
14
14
months
months. Did I say 14 year?
old. Yeah,
Sorry about that.
that's good.
14-month old, and she was 18, and she had a lot of curiosity. She was looking at, a very, very blonde Californian looking girl with a very dark Hispanic male married together, and she had questions, and so she asked us about our love story, and we talked candidly about that. John and I did not start out in a godly relationship. I was in a very dark place at the time, and questioning God and questioning the way I was raised, and just in a dark place. And so we didn't start out in the best of circumstances, but God, he intervened, and thank God, because 4 years we broke up, but we remained friends. And 4 years later, God brought us back together again, redeemed that relationship, and we got married. And my husband became a believer actually because of that. So I was sharing that story with her, and I was watching her face, and she was really drinking it in, and it just hit me. This is the way God's using me, because this woman was in a very toxic and abusive relationship. That's what landed her there. She needed to get away, and that's why she was there, and she needed help. And God was using our story to minister to her, to show her that there are ways that God can make a way for a healthy relationship, for a godly relationship. And that blessed me, because I was like, just the simple fact of being obedient and sharing your story with somebody else, you don't know the impact that you're
Right.
going to have
That's right.
on somebody else, right?
Exactly.
And so our call to action, I think, as believers, is don't waste an opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's an incredible opportunity, and if you miss it, God is able to send somebody else, but it's a missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Is there, now for our listeners, is there something that you'd like to pass on to them? Something maybe that you learned through this whole experience, or something personal?
Yeah, this cruise was, there were so many things about it, like the fact that my son Kanan, who was pretty clear he would never go on a boat, ever, went on a boat
Yes.
to serve my parents so they could make this trip and to work with this podcast. And him laying down that fear, he found that he actually really enjoyed cruising, which is a plus for his mother. But it was also a huge, it just how God moves. And then to watch the way our community, our 50 plus, like surrounded him with so much love and care and like genuine respect and appreciation, was a ministry that I don't think he really thought about maybe. But as his mother, knowing that he'd been hurt by this very same church, by people that have served at the church or gone to this church, to see these people heal some serious pain of not being able to trust people in church at times, which is something I grew up having issues with as well. But seeing this group be the church that God asks, which is to be loving, was huge for me to watch that for him. And then to watch people like my dad, who's, and I know he's going to hear this, but is notoriously a horrible tipper. Sorry, Daddy. Not perfect, but he was redeemed this trip. But I had told him how the tipping, can make a huge impact. And I wasn't meaning spiritually, but I was saying their lives are different than ours. And yes, they get like a percentage when we do a group tip, or like a prepaid tip. But the work they do, they send this money back to their families. And I just said, it's important to give these tips and to show appreciation, not to just be expecting that they're serving you and you've paid your money, now serve me. And I said, if you can consider giving a tip, it's a huge impact in their lives. And I watched my dad tip these people every single meal. But not just that, he connected with them. And the entire group started connecting with them in such powerful ways. And we had such a sweet interaction with the two women with unique names, Dong and Thriller, and so, but the community, watching them come to the table to see my dad and interact with both of the ladies who were so sweet and took such good care of our family and our table. And then to just see people on the cruise, you'd come around the corner and they'd be holding hands and praying with different staff members. And, it was pretty amazing. And even just the interaction with people on the ship, like there was this young man that kind of accosted my dad in the bar. He was drunk and he got a little carried away and like swatted my dad on the behind. And, like there was this whole, and I was like, what? But he was drinking and my dad, instead of reacting, just responded with love, gave him a hug, and later on in the cruise ship, I ran into the young man and I told him we'd met him the other night. And I reenacted this story, which I won't give you all the details because it's pretty hilarious, but also a lot. But anyway, he was so embarrassed. Aww. But my dad walked up to him and I said, this is my dad that you met by hand a couple of times. But anyway, and I just said, this is my dad, Pastor Allen. And the young man's face just sunk. Oh. And my dad said, I'm so glad I got to see you again. And he asked him, do you go to church? And the kid was like, no, not yet. And my dad said, well, I'd really love for you to read this tract I have and just, consider it. And he said, I'm so glad I got to see you again. And I just loved how watching people interact, whether it was at the mission or on the trip. And it was just a really amazing experience.
Yeah, it's such a blessing. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing so much of your life story. I know there's a lot more. We may have you come back in the future to ask you more about your life, but we're very grateful that you came and that you're willing to share on our podcast and that you were on the trip with us. You've been a blessing, totally blessing for Hidden Treasure Productions and your son, who's right here. And so we just want to thank you.
Well, I want to thank you guys because you too are a blessing. And I think, remembering things is hard for people. And so, watching John capture things and give us those capturing those moments. So we have those to remind us of what God did on this trip. And then for you guys to be capturing it with this podcast and giving other people the chance to have this experience and hear that they too can have that is a huge blessing. So I thank you guys too.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for listening. This has been Voices of the Voyage, a podcast made in conjunction with Calvary Chapel Oceanside Senior Ministries and Hidden Treasure Productions. New episodes will be out weekly, wherever you listen to your podcast, including our website, hiddentreasureproductions.org. Our hosts have been
Valerie Herrera
and Kitty Inouye. Our producer is Kanan Hessling. Our technical director is Chris Inouye. And our creative director is John Andy Herrera. Thank you for listening. Hope to see you next week. Bye.